President Trump is in Qatar amid growing scrutiny over his plan to accept a luxury plane from that country. He's suggesting Qatar approached him with a jet offer. Listen.
So they said to me, we would like to, in effect, we would like to make a gift. You've done so many things, and we'd like to make a gift to the Defense Department, which is where it's going. And I said, well, that's nice. Now, some people say, oh, you shouldn't accept gifts for the country. My attitude is, why wouldn't I accept a gift? We're giving to everybody else. Why wouldn't I accept a gift?
Trump's plan to accept the plane raises legal and ethical questions, and there is also bipartisan concern over possible security issues, including what Congressman Jeff Hurd told me just last hour.
I have serious concerns with this so-called gift from the government of Qatar. Security concerns, ethical concerns using this used airplane.
To think that Air Force One, where the president is asked to function as our commander-in-chief in a situation room, making life or death decisions, is on a plane given to us by a foreign government with 200 miles of wiring in it, is an indication to me of complete recklessness on the part of the president.
CNN correspondent Tom Foreman is here to break down what it would take to overhaul the jet so that it could be used by the U.S. government. And it's not cheap, Tom.
No, it's not. And the short answer is it would take a lot. Let's look at the capabilities of this unique plane, maybe the most unique aircraft in this country. Look, it has to have highly secure communication systems that nobody can hack into, nobody can read. It needs to have defensive systems to avoid missiles that might be fired at it or any other kind of weapons. The ability to shield against electromagnetic pulse. What that means is every wire in this plane has to be shielded in such a way that it can't be taken out from without. And the capability to refuel in flight. Remember, George W. Bush operated from this plane on 9/11 because that's what you do to make sure you have a safe command center in the sky. Doing all of that on a plane of any sort, but particularly one that's been gifted to you from another country, where and security analysts say you basically have to take the whole thing apart and put it back together to make sure there are no bugs, no built-in failures that have been put in there, could take up to 2 years. Now remember, there are new Air Force Ones on the way that Donald Trump negotiated. They are on the way. Will they be done in time for him to use? We don't know, but presidents don't do it for themselves. They do it for the next president, for the country. Up to 2 years to do that. And in that time, here's the really key part to bear in mind. Making all of those changes to this free gift is estimated to cost maybe 3 times as much as the value of the free gift. And then allegedly this goes to his private, presidential library, his presidential library. In other words, for this free plane, American taxpayers may pay an additional $800 million for 2 years of use. 2 years because this president, because he says he's been made this offer, and he doesn't want to wait for the planes that we're already paying for to get ready. Those are a lot of practical reasons why people who may say politically they like him, they don't like him, they agree with him, they don't agree with him, may say, why are you taking this supposed free gift when there are huge ethical questions about it and a lot of practical and financial questions too?
The one thing that we're not hearing from Trump is what I'm hearing from Republicans and Democrats but Republicans too on the Hill, is the national security concerns about this gift.
So there's several levels of national security concern here. One, there is the idea if it is outfitted with bugs, if there's any way that the government can spy on the plane. But then there's also this level of almost exactly what he said, which is what people are concerned about. They're saying that Qataris came to him and said, if we can help you, let us. That's exactly what people are afraid of, because it means what are we getting in return? What are they going to get in return? Which he seems to fundamentally not either want to answer or not really understand the level that people are concerned about this as a national security threat when he continues to just say, well, it's a free gift. You can hear these Republicans say over and over again, there's no such thing as a free gift. That's been the Republican argument as well.
Yeah, and the Republicans, John Thune, I asked him about this yesterday about national security concerns. He said, well, we're going to have to vet this. And he called it a hypothetical situation. And then I asked Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, about it yesterday, and he said, well, Trump, of course, shares the same national security concerns that we do, and he'll make sure this is a secure exchange.
Well, look, stripping down the plane and making sure there aren't any hidden microphones on there. I as someone who's never retrofitted a 747, that doesn't seem like the biggest. Yeah, not yet. The day is young. That doesn't seem like the biggest challenge here. To me, the bigger question is, will Thune and Johnson follow through and do real oversight? Ted Cruz, chairman of the Senate Commerce Committee, does he look into this? Like, these are going
I'm guessing no.
Yeah, right. I think we sort of know, but that's really where, if this story advances beyond sort of liberal outrage and some sort of Republican concerns, that's really what will happen. It'll happen where you and I spend most of our days on Congress. And I'm not convinced that we're going to have big hearings looking into this. As long as Republicans, here's my caveat, as long as Republicans are in charge. Yeah, that's my parachute.
Yeah, it also sort of makes Donald Trump look like the beta, right? And the country. We're going across the world because we're too poor to get a plane from somebody else. I mean, this is Trump, who's like, we're a superpower, and yet we're taking handouts from Qatar and authoritarian nations. So that in and of itself, just sort of the optics of it, is really, I think, contradicting what Trump's sort of idea of America is, and himself as like the great salesman in bringing America back to greatness. Well, if our greatness is relying on another country's largesse, it seems to be a contradiction.
Yeah, but he's just going to say he's getting a good deal, right? Yeah. He's already said that, right?
He would say the opposite, that he's getting the deal because he's the alpha, and they want to give him
But also,
money.
he's no deal because it's going to take millions or billions to retrofit the
And
plane
years.
to years, exactly. He'll never fly this plane, most likely, as president anyway.
Well, I hope he doesn't, because he's not a licensed pilot.
It's about his post-presidency.
It is about his post-presidency.
As I mentioned, you're the former CIA director. This gift of this plane, unprecedented from Qatar. Any concerns from an intel standpoint?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think there's a lot of concerns about when you buy a plane from a country like Qatar. You have to worry about just exactly how many listening devices are part of that plane, what other intelligence are they trying to gather. Look, this is not a smart idea for the president for several reasons. One, constitutionally, I think our forefathers made clear that presidents ought not to get a gift from a foreign country through the Emoluments Clause. Secondly, I think that the appearance of having the president of the United States flying around the world in a plane from Qatar just presents the wrong kind of appearance for a president of the United States. And thirdly, I think it contradicts what the president wants in terms of his whole economic policy, which is to restore manufacturing in the United States and to have Americans buy American. Here he is receiving a gift from a foreign country rather than turning to our own manufacturers. And I'm glad he made the deal for Boeing with regards to Qatar. I think that's an important step in the right direction. But why isn't he putting more pressure on Boeing to produce a plane for the president of the United States? That's where the pressure ought to be, on Boeing to help produce Air Force One.
You spoke about the trust that you have in President Trump. I'd love to get you on the record regarding this planned gift from the Qatari government to the president, this luxury jet worth hundreds of millions of dollars. You laugh. I do wonder whether you think this is ethical.
I'm not laughing.
Well, you were chuckling. I wonder if you think it's ethical for President Trump to accept it.
Well, I'm chuckling, I guess, because I think the media is making a much bigger deal out of this than it needs to be. Look, have you been to the Reagan Library in California? There's the old Air Force One sitting there in the Reagan Museum. That's what's going to happen to this gift, not to President Trump, but the Department of Defense. This will go through the ethical checks and the legal checks to make sure it is everything's in order before it happens. But I know that, look, President Trump is frustrated that he's flying around in this 40-year-old plane. He has wanted a new Air Force One. He's tried to work with Boeing to make it happen. For whatever reasons, it's not happened. I mean, my goodness, the president in his first term wanted to change the paint scheme from the dark blue, light blue, white to red, white, and blue to make it look more patriotic, and they wouldn't let him do it. he's going to get his way on this. It's going to be painted red, white, and blue. The President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, will be flying on this new plane unless the courts intervene. And I don't think that's going to happen because I think what he's doing is perfectly legal. This is a gift to the Department of Defense. It's not to Donald J. Trump.
Would you be saying the same thing if this was a gift, aside from all the national security concerns about having a foreign power put together arguably one of the most sensitive pieces of equipment that the president uses? Would you be saying the same thing, that this is totally fine, if this were a gift from the Qataris or any other government to Joe Biden or Barack Obama or Bill Clinton?
Sure.
You would?
I think, in intellectually honest with you, Boris, I would, because it's not going to Joe Biden. It's not going to Barack Obama. It's going to the Department of Defense. These departments are allowed to accept gifts, as far as I know. We have trade with other countries. That's why President Trump was in the Middle East, to get these relationships going. I think it was a great gesture on the part of the Qatari government, and we'll see what happens. But let's meet back here in 6 months and see what happens.